Hey everybody, I want you to think about your beginnings today. There are four different kinds of ways that you can start a narrative essay like this, and three of them are really good ways, and one of them is not so good. So I'd like to talk about those different options that you have. And the way that's not good is basically called a typical lead, and it's when you use too much background information. You give too much build up to the story that you're trying to tell. You might remember we looked at Penny Kittle's piece the last couple of days, and her piece starts right in the moment. She dives right in. She doesn't explain where they are, what has happened. She just starts with dialogue. Okay? So that's what you want to do. You want to dive right in. So you have to try to avoid being typical. I'm going to read to you a little bit of an essay that has a typical lead so that you can hear what it sounds like. Typical lead might go something like this. It was a day at the end of June 1984. My whole family, including my mom, dad, brother, and me, were at our camp at Rangley Lake. We arrived the night before at 10 o'clock, so it was dark when we got there and unpacked. The next morning, when I was eating breakfast, my dad started yelling for me from down at the dock at the top of his lungs about a car in the lake. So, in a typical lead, you might hear yourself including things like the time of day, the date, and you might give your whole story away by saying something like, my dad yelled at me because there was a car in the lake. Well, you don't want to give the whole story away, okay? So avoid being typical like that. Avoid the buildup. So here's a way you could change a typical lead into an action lead. Listen to the difference. I ran down to our dock as fast as my legs could carry me, my feet pounding away on the old wood, hurrying me toward the sound of my dad's panicked voice. Okay, so it starts with action verbs. I ran. Okay, feet pounding, hurrying me. Dad's panicked voice. He hollered. Okay, so action verbs. Concentrate on the action of this moment, what's happening. Okay. You could also do what Penny Kittle does, use dialogue at the beginning. This is how you could change it up a little bit. Start right with a conversation. For instance, Scott, get down here on the double, my father hollered. Dad, I hollered back, where are you? I was sitting in the kitchen table eating breakfast at our first morning at Rangley Lake Camp. And from someplace outside, my dad was calling for me. Scott, move it. You're not going to believe this. So, like Penny, you might choose to start with conversation. Okay, that's a dialogue lead. The final way that you might choose to start something is with a reaction. Show yourself thinking about something, reflecting on something. So this is how you might change from dialogue to reaction. Listen to this. I couldn't imagine what my father could be hollering about already at 7 in the morning. I thought hard and fast about what I might have done to get him so riled up. Had he found out about the cigarettes I'd hidden in my knapsack, or the way I'd talked to my mother the night before when we got to camp and she'd asked me to help unpack the car? So, in a reaction lead, your verbs show thinking. I couldn't imagine. I thought hard. You ask a couple questions. Had he found out? Or or the way I talked to my mother the night before? So you have these options. You can start in the moment by showing action. You can start in the moment by showing conversation. Or you can start in the moment by showing reaction. So we already noted that Penny Kittle decided to start her piece with dialogue. But she could have very easily changed things around and started with a reaction lead. She could have started with the part in her essay that comes in the middle where she says, "The only thing I saw was framed in the lens of my camera, Champs-Élysées, the river with a few scattered boats and the twinkling light of the sun across the deep green water, the sculptures tall and thin on spires unseen from below, gargoyles peered out over the city. Entire lives change in a moment like this." So she could show herself thinking about something, but that may change the tone and the pace of the piece. So she decided to go with the dialogue instead to create that urgency right from the get-go. So you have to make those kinds of choices as a writer. What kind of lead do you need to use to get you right into the moment that establishes the tone that you want for the moment and establishes the pace that you want for the moment? So I want you to practice that today. I want you to do 3 different versions of your essay. I want you to try to start with action. I want you to redo it and start with dialogue, and then do a third revision where you start with a reaction. You're thinking about something that happened. You're showing emotion a little bit. Okay? So give it a try and get some feedback from 1 or 2 people at your table and try to make a decision about which lead is the best one for you to use. Okay? See you tomorrow.